Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Another video log from me, Itsuchi 2. Today I wanted to discuss animations. Like I say, in the previous vlog, like I mentioned, I had a couple of requests that people wanted to see more of the back-end things and the processes that I'm doing to build this game. The number one thing most of you wanted to see was the character importing process, which I already uploaded, and that was way longer than I expected. Today we're going to be talking about animations. That was the second thing you guys had voted for, and so I wanted to cover that for you today. This one is going to be a bit longer. I already know up front. Animations are so time consuming. They're the most time consuming part of the development. If we ever found a way to do .mot files and get those animations from the original game, oh my gosh, please let me know. That will speed up production so much faster. Like, you guys do not understand how much faster production will be if that happens. So anyway, until we figure that out, I have to basically make my own animations from scratch, and today I'm going to show you guys how I do that. So, first things first, we'll jump right in. The first step is to actually grab the keyframes. I won't show you how I do that, but basically using the Dolphin emulator, you can basically pause the game and basically move the game forward frame for frame, and the Dolphin also allows you to take screenshots. So what I'll do is I'll first go and extract all the screenshots that I'll need. So I'll go ahead and show you guys that folder. Let's see, screenshots. So these are basically all the screenshots from the different games that I take through Dolphin. I have them stored here. I usually use Revolution 2 to extract all my animations because it has basically everyone. I'll use GNT4 for like the Sound 5, Iruka, those people. But for anyone that was in Revolution 2, I'll use Revolution 2's animations. So here are basically the ones that I need to add in. So these are basically the moves, all the animations left you'll see in these blue folders. Don't worry about these. But these folders where you see the blue Sakura, these are all the screenshots that I've taken for the last remaining moves. Except for the stance. I may redo the stance, we'll see. Don't worry about that one. But these are the ones that I need to add into the game to complete Sakura's moveset for her pre-time skip form. As many of you have noticed in the demo, she's not complete. Today we're going to go ahead and do the running B, or what they would call AB in GNT language. So these are every single frame of her active animation. I captured it starting here and all the way down. So you can see, usually I look at here, it's about a second long. Basically, a game runs at 60 frames per second. So 60 screenshots equals 60 frames, which is 1 second's worth of an animation. So you can see it's kind of, these extra frames are probably just for blending. It's about a 60 frame animation, excluding blending frames. So I'm going to show you how I use this information to recreate that animation. So first things first is there's something, basic rules of animation is, actually let me set up the model first before I get started. To set up, this is going to be a little bit tricky since I have my camera down here, so I'll bring this up a little bit higher. So first we're going to drag Sakura. This is just a test scene that I use for animations. We're going to drag a Sakura model here, just so we can start somewhere. So she's going to start in the middle, and you'll see immediately her animations are going to pop up here. I already have her stance animation in there, so that's what this is. So basically all these kind of rows you see are going to be the keyframes. So this would be, of course, frame 0, where she starts in this pose. And then I kind of progress. These are just the basics to animation. I kind of progress through each kind of major keyframe at which her body changes. Some are, you have some one-offs here for to give it a little bit more range of motion. Like if you look at her hands move on an irregular, what do you call it, time scale. Anyway, that's the basics to animation. Is basically at keyframe 1, I got to go in and tell basically where is each bone supposed to be. Move on to the next set of major keyframes. Where those bones have moved to, and the game will automatically blend that motion for me. And when you put it all together and loop it, it makes a nice smooth animation. So first things first, we're going to add a new animation. I'll try to make this so you can see. So this is the list of animations. You'll see there's a lot of them. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom to create a new one. Okay, create new. I'm going to go to Sakura's MOT, and this one's just kind of like a run punch. So I don't even know what to name this. Let's see. It's kind of like a down punch, so maybe like a drop punch technically. Drop. Do we use on this way? Yeah, drop punch. And that's just when she runs. She kind of like boom. So I just get creative with the names. You can name it whatever you want to. I just try to keep the names kind of descriptive, so when I see it stored up here, I kind of know what it is. So we'll create that drop punch animation, and you'll see this will bring us to a blank animation. There are a few things that I like to what I like to put in from the beginning to make it easier, because you'll see basically here there's no information. I have to go into the model and kind of move each bone independently. So I like to kind of preset each bone in there so I can just jump right into the animations. I don't expect you to understand most of this. If you do animations, you'll understand. If you don't do animations, hang tight, fun stuff comes. I just personally have a preset animation that I don't use in the game that basically resets the model exactly where I need it and autofills all the bones I need it. Basically, I just put a neutral setting here. These are the only bones I'll ever work with. There are more bones in the model, but these are the ones that I'll ever work with, so I have those kind of preset exactly the way I need for starting motion. So I'm just going to copy those. I select them and then, Control C. I think you can also right click. No, you can't. So just Control C to copy those, that whole set of keyframes. And then I'll go back to that drop punch animation. That's blank, and I'll paste those here. So this is where we're going to start. Basically facing towards player 2. And we're going to start from this T-pose. All right, so now Sakura is ready for the animation process to begin. So now I'm going to go back to these photos, and what we're going to do is we're going to do our first set of keyframes. The easiest way to notice this, remember I mentioned earlier about blending frames? So we basically want to find the first set of major keyframes, so we can start from there. So that would not be the first one. I know sounds like it would be the first one. It would not be the first one. These are blending frames. So I want to find basically when she goes to move and she stops, that's the first actual keyframe, and we're going to blend everything from there. So I'm going to find that. Easiest way is to watch like her limbs, and when her limbs come to a stop, that's how you know we're at that first keyframe. So you'll see right here in this range, watch Sakura's hands, like they kind of charge up, and then you'll see the second motion start. So this is where we need to be starting our animation. All of this is just basically smoothing frames. So we're going to, all right, let's see, where is it actually? Boom, boom, boom. Right here. So look at her legs. Her legs start to move on frame 10 is where her legs start to move. So we're going to go back to, this is the last frame where she's doing this motion. So this is the first keyframe at frame 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this image and I'm going to bring it over here, and I'm going to zoom in so that I can see everything her body is doing right now. So now I'm going to go back to Unity. I'm going to minimize this as well. And basically I'm going to match that pose. So let me kind of clear some of these things out. All right. So the base bone is actually the hip. So first I need to determine her rotation in space. So I can see she's kind of facing a little bit towards me. So I gotta, and don't worry about her dress over here, by the way. I know it looks weird. Just, it's for in-game. It's going to look like that when we're in this mode. So first we're going to line up the hip, because that's where the base is. Okay, so we'll just give it a few degrees of motion here. And this is all just guessing. You'll get better with time if you're new to animations. This is pretty easy. I basically try to match up, like I'll look at the texture lines here and make sure those lines look as close to this as possible around the hip. Don't worry about this area yet because that's later, but just the hip bone. So that's going to be these set of vertices here. So I'll usually look at which way, let's see here. Like that V right here is a good indicator to tell. So I'll line up, I know it's kind of weird over here, but I'll need to line that up. It looks like it's about there. And it doesn't need to be perfect either. Oh, I need to actually make this straight first. Key thing is to have the camera straight at about the same angle. So kind of upwards and down facing. So there we go, that's better. All right. So I'd say, and you can always tweak later, so it's not super important now, but get it as close as possible and go with that. And if you need to tweak, you can always tweak later. That's going to be about close to where she is in the game. All right, so that's the hip. The next I like to do are the legs. The legs are kind of they're their own extension. So I'll usually, and they're in order. So I'll start with the left leg. That's this one. So let's see. And same story. We're going to match the leg as much as possible. Okay, and I usually like to use this too. If her spine is going this way, her leg is about a 90-degree angle, almost exactly. So I'll follow that same pattern here, spine, and then about a 90-degree. That's a good way to tell. And I can tell from her foot and her knee, it's not like inwards, it's kind of facing a little bit outwards. All right. Her low leg, oh, actually, already made a mistake. So I'm not recording, so all of these motions have not been saved yet. So we'll have to start over. That's mistake number one. This needs to be recording. And you'll see when I start recording, it'll switch back. My apologies. See, you always gotta check these things to make sure they're being recorded, because if I had gotten too far into this, I would have lost all of that data. So, resetting, we'll start over again. Fortunately, I didn't get too far. The second mistake I made is we're actually on frame 9. We're not on frame 0, and this is actually off by 1 digit. So this is technically frame 8, because this starts at 0, that starts at 1. So we're actually supposed to be on frame 8. So I'll match frame 8, and we'll do all of that over again. Fortunately, I remember kind of roughly where it was. All right, and now you'll see here it's recording that dot here, and you can tell because everything's in red. See, I make mistakes too. That's why these things take so long. You got to make sure everything's great, and you'll do some work and realize, oh, I wasn't recording. Okay, all right, about there, roughly. All right, that's about good. All right, back to that left leg. And you'll see here it's starting to add in those dots, saving these keyframes that I'm doing. We're going to rotate this leg more outwards over here, a little bit upwards. All right, and what I like to do is, you can see here her bone isn't really, her knee's not really bent. It's pretty much fully extended like it already is. But I usually like to give it just a plot point, because basically the game's going to smooth from the last point to the new point. So even though her leg isn't moving from this frame, I actually want to save that this is the position, even though it's not really moving. And the easiest way to do that is I can right click and say add key, or you can simply, I'll undo that, or you can simply just adjust the leg maybe a little bit. Clearly your leg isn't going to be perfectly straight, so I'll usually give it just a little bit there. Yep, and that'll also save the plot, just that little variance, to ensure that the game remembers, hey, at this point, even if it's the default, it still needs to be at that point. And then the foot, it doesn't look like it's moved that much. So same story, it's pretty neutral. I'll go ahead and just give it a little bit so that the game saves the point. We almost never use the toe, so I just leave the toe as is. Sometimes we'll use the toe. I don't think in this animation we're going to be using the toe. So I'll just leave that blank because we'll never use it. It'll just say default flat. I may use it later. If so, I'll come back. All right. And I actually can tell her leg's just a little bit more rotated towards us. So we'll do that here. All right, maybe a little bit more inward. Okay, about right there. Okay, onto the right leg. All right, starting with that high leg. This one's going to be almost aligned with her spine pretty much. It's going to be rotated a little bit inwards. Maybe come out a little bit. And then you see there's a slight bend in her knee, which is this low leg. So we'll give her that slight bend. It looks like my leg is not high enough. So I can tell now, because her leg here is aligned with her spine and her leg's going lower, my leg isn't going as high as hers, so I know my hip is off. So I'm going to readjust that hip. I can tell now that that's a little bit off, so let me readjust that a little bit further. All right, line up that leg a little bit better. This will help me reference. Okay. And I'm being a little bit more thorough. You don't have to be this thorough, but I'm trying to replicate G&T as much as possible. And so I want to replicate as much as I possibly can, as closely. And then we'll adjust this right leg a little bit too. I'm sorry, the left leg, since I did move that. All right. This needs to go just a little bit higher, about there. And then this one needs to go maybe back a little bit further. Yeah, because it is just a slight bend backwards and a slight bend backwards. Maybe have this come a little bit more like that. And then her foot's going to be really far back. All right. So that's pretty good. All right. And now that I got the legs, now I need to adjust the height. You'll see here, she's not as high off the ground here. I use the root personally to adjust the height because that just changes the whole model. It can get very tricky adjusting the position. You almost never want to adjust the position of a bone because that's going to warp their joints. Joints don't move, they rotate. Almost all the joints we're dealing with are either kind of back forth movement or rotation movement. So you always want to use this rotation. You never want to adjust the position of a joint bone, but the root is just the model in general. So that's what I usually use for position, is I'm going to adjust this root downwards a little bit to be closer to the ground. She's about there. And I can tell by the shadow, right? So she's going to be about this high off the ground. You can tell here her height off the ground, and then I want to match that over here. So she's about right there on this keyframe. All right, back to rotation. Okay, so now we're done with basically the lower half of her body, and you see it's matching up pretty well. At least you would never be able to tell it was a custom animation. Looking at it, you know, you can blame it on camera angle. All right, next is going to be the waist. So we're going to start moving on to the upper body, and that's where I start looking at kind of these waist lines. Textures are very helpful for this because it helps you track which way that waist is pointing. So it looks like it's bent a little bit backwards, twisted quite a bit our way, but not all the way because there's still the breast icon that'll finish that twist. But the waist will start the twist. And then let's see, it's a little bit too far that way. We'll go this way. All right, and then we'll move on to the breast. Waist is usually pretty easy. Breast. Actually, that breast goes pretty far. Let me see. Yeah, because it's almost facing backwards. She's about here. And so I can tell by the shadowing, her back's a little bit bent at the breast. So I'll move her waist back just a little bit, maybe this way. All right, make sure these lines are basically matching as much as possible. That's looking pretty good. All right, and then I'll just go ahead and do the head. I rarely ever adjust the neck. It's mostly me being lazy. You can if you want the perfect animation, but this is basically, I rarely ever use the neck, so I'll just jump straight to the head for this one, and I'll make the head. Now this is where I get a little bit different from G&T. So I haven't yet programmed in the heads to look at the characters' faces. Like, you know, when you're, like basically in Clash Ninja, you know, it doesn't matter where you're standing, their heads will always track the player. I haven't added that into my game yet, so I want my animations for the moment to control that. So what I'll usually do is I'll put the camera in the player's position for player 2, and make sure, two things I like to check in this perspective. One is I want to check to make sure her body is level. Right now you can see she's kind of front heavy, which when you're charging up, you want to be more back heavy, which means I need to adjust the hip. So I'll usually, let's see, go more like this. All right, that's closer, more like upright almost. And just want to make sure when you're looking like this, that will be more accurate to how she should be moving for physics' sake. And also look at her feet. You know, she's been running, so her feet need to be in front of her, not kind of sideways. All right, so I readjusted that, and I'll double check it when we return. And the other thing I want to make sure is that the head is at least somewhat looking at the player. So you see right now she's not looking at us. It doesn't have to be all the way. It needs to make sense, but like maybe about there would be better. So she at least looks like she's looking at us. Maybe have a little bit of her face facing the camera. All right, and then I'll usually come back to the side profile and make sure it makes sense. And the hip still looks good, even though I adjusted it, but this head is a little bit further than I like from this angle. So I'm just gonna de-exaggerate that a little bit further so it makes a little bit more sense. There, maybe right there. That just looks better from this perspective. Yep, and then obviously, of course, eyes can always track. All right, Lita. All right. So we're almost done. I know, you see how much work this already is. I don't even know how far we are into this video, and we're still on keyframe 1. That's animating for you. Okay. All right. And now we're going to jump onto so the collars I also almost never use. Think about a human body. Like, how often are you using your collars for most of these motions? Like a punch, your collar is going to stay mostly the same. You're using mostly your shoulder for that. But if you're raising your arms, for example, that's where your collar really moves. In this particular motion, she's not really raising her arms at all. So I usually, again, me being lazy, if you want to make the most perfect and most fluid animation, use them collars. But I don't have time for that. It's just too many bones to adjust. Because every single movement you make to this collar is going to adjust the position for all of these. So the simpler you make it, the better. I'll just leave the collar where it is. She's not going to be raising her arms too much, and I'll just use circular motion. This animation is easy enough to hide without using that collar. So I'm just going to jump straight into the shoulder and leave the collar alone. So this one, I can tell her arm is kind of, I check her arms like her elbows facing right up like her mid-thigh, right at that line of her shorts. So I'm going to try to line this up the same way. And then I can tell her elbows a little bit higher. So that means her arm is more forward. And then low arm almost explicitly only uses the Z axis. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm just going to bring that arm up to where it looks like it is, and then I'm going to go back and adjust this high arm. The high arm has the most, that's the shoulder, that's going to have the most range of freedom. Our forearms, I mean, there's a little bit of motion there, but it's mostly just this motion towards you, and then the shoulder controls the rest. So I never, on low arm, I never use anything other than the Z axis. So if you ever are seeing something like this, like numbers in these fields on that low arm, you're probably animating it wrong and she's going to look deformed. So these should always be 0. I only use the Z axis for those. And then any tweaking to that, you do with the high arm. So I'm going to put her arm about there. That looks about right. Move this down a little bit. All right. Great. And then the hand is pretty neutral. Maybe I'll give it just a little bit lax so it's not like fully, straight out. I'll give it just like a little bit of lax here, kind of towards that a little bit, maybe a little down. There are fingers, but I never animate fingers. What I mean by that is I'm not going to say you're going to adjust every single finger every time she moves. I've already done it before, so what I like to do is I like to copy and paste fingers, animations, like positions. I just have, fists, relaxed, jutsu. I just have certain hand poses. I can manually do it, but it just takes too many time. You have to program every single finger, all 3 bones in every single finger for every keyframe. I'm not doing that. So I usually will have just a couple of defaults. So let me go ahead and grab her hands from a relaxed stance. Usually, like, let's say she was jumping. I know when you jump, your hands are more relaxed. So I'm going to go ahead and go to her jumping animation. And you see her hands are already fixed, and I see all those fingers here. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab those. All right, we're going to grab all these finger bones and just copy them over versus trying to like redo all of these. Shortcuts. Copy those. Go back to our drop punch. Oops, that's not drop punch. Drop punch. And then these can actually just go on frame 0 because I'm not changing those anytime soon. So we'll just default those to... Yep, being relaxed already. So now we'll go back here. And you don't have to be recording to paste, but I do want to enter recording mode again now that we're back to normal. All right, so you'll see now her hands are in that relaxed form. We'll actually change this to punching. In G&T, they never changed it to a fist. I am going to change these to fists. That's one area where I do try to be more thorough. G&T cut corners too. And yeah, sometimes it looks ridiculous when you're punching with your fists open. It makes no sense. All right, so now this is looking just like G&T for the most part. All right, get this camera back normal. Okay, and now we're gonna move on. We're pretty much done with this left arm. Now we're gonna move on to the right arm. Same story, we're gonna skip that collar. All right, and looks like this arm's just kind of generally down, maybe a little bit more relaxed upwards. Maybe it looks like her elbows are rotated a little bit inwards. We're going to take that low arm. It's mostly straight. I'm just going to give her just a little bit of relaxation to make it feel, more normal. Rotate it towards us a little bit more, maybe a little bit further out. As you can see, her hand's a little bit above her bum. And then adjust that hand. And it's probably more like that. Give it back. And I also like to look at the negative space. If you look at the negative space, obviously minding her dress moving in motion here versus motion doesn't apply to the game during animations for fabric. But anyway, here you can see like the difference between her hand and her bum and that kind of negative space. Right here, I like to make sure the negative space at least somewhat matches, and right here you can tell it does. So that little shape in between her arm and dress matches the shape here. So that's pretty accurate. And then before I move on, we're pretty much done with this keyframe. Before I move on, I also like to just confirm it from a few angles to make sure it looks natural. Because right here it looks fine, but maybe it doesn't look right from the other angles. Clearly this angle is a still frame, so I can't check here, so I need to check in my game. So from the side, she looks good. From this way, that looks all right. From the back, okay, so looking at this angle, because this would be basically if she was in player 2's position, this is going to be the angle. I'd say this motion right here doesn't have a lot of energy in it. So I will probably, let me see. It's kind of hard to maybe go for more like that. That looks a little bit better versus just being straight and so close. From this angle, let's see. Yeah, she's kind of back heavy. I do think she's leaning a little bit too far back on the hip. So let me go ahead and modify that just slightly. This one, yeah. Maybe like that. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Make sure it still makes sense from this angle. Yep, still looks just like over here. Everything's looking just about right. Enough, at least close enough. All right, I'm satisfied with this keyframe. So we're good here. These are all the things I'm going to do for this keyframe. That was the first one. You see how much long this takes? We got plenty more to go. All right, this keyframe looks good. Now that we're done with the first keyframe, you'll notice this. You see this blending right here? So that's because she's blending from T-pose. I'm actually going to blend from her running animation. That's actually done through programming. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make her first keyframe the exact same here. So I'm just going to copy all of these and paste these over onto her neutral stance. So she, on the animation, it's going to look like she starts at a still, but basically, when she's in game and she's running, it's going to blend for 8 frames, but it actually includes the first 8 frames of the animation as it's blending. So I want the blend to blend into this first frame. So I'm going to have that first frame cover this entire 8-frame window. So that way, as it's blending, it'll blend, and then once the blending is done here, she'll be at that full motion. So that blending's done, like I say, through programming, not here. So these should all be the same between the frame 0 and then that first keyframe. So that's easy. So I'll usually start at the keyframe and then copy and paste it backwards. It's not as easy when you start here. So I like to start there and then copy it backwards. All right, now we go back to the image and we look for the next set of keyframes. So now we see she starts another range of motion, and I gotta locate the next moment. So it looks like she steps down, and then right here, look at her leg. Her leg starts to change. So that this is the next set of keyframes. There, it's when it changed, so we go back. Her next set of keyframes is at frame 15, which is actually frame 14 in my game. So same story. We're going to put this to the side. We're going to zoom in to make it easier to see. And now I'm going to go to frame 14. And we are going to match this frame now. I hate animating. This is why PTS Sakura wasn't done by Teaser 6, because I was going to finish her, and I was like, you saw I took all the screenshots, and it's so time-consuming. I don't have time to do this for like 10 animations, 15 animations per character. It's so time-consuming. Some are easier than others, but anyway, let's dive back in. Okay, so again, we're going to start at the hip, and we're going to match that. Very important note here is that remember that you can't just jump straight here. You have to remember that we're blending from the last frame. So we want to make sure that the motion from the last frame to this one also makes sense. But usually following this will make it make sense, but you always do, we'll backtrack in a moment to make sure it makes sense. So sometimes basically what you'll do is you may have to go in between and tweak it in between the keyframes, the major keyframes. But anyway, that comes later for polishing. So we're going to tweak that hip again. Looks like it's about there. She's stepping down on this leg over here. So great, hips should be good. We'll adjust later if needed. All right, bring this leg back towards the center. All right. Basically, this line right here is the center of the stage. So your left leg should always be to the left of that line or no further than the center, like if you're stepping down to balance. But typically I put it a little bit to the left, and then that's kind of how I know where the leg should end up. But anyway, we're going to go back up. Her knee is about here, and then we're going to bend this leg back down. Don't worry about the height yet. We'll adjust the height later. I just want to get the angle right first, and then we'll adjust the height based off the angle of the feet. All right. Height is actually not typically controlled in the game. It's actually controlled by the emotion, by the animation, I mean. Okay, I think, yeah, height leg needs to come up just slightly. It's about there, because you can see here it's about, again, another 90-degree angle there. So 90 degree, roughly, guesstimating. And then this leg is kind of tilted backwards a little bit, not fully straight down. Mine is tilted kind of straight down. So I'm going to bring this back a little bit. That's about right. And then this is the hardest part about animations. Animations that take place in the air only are easier because I don't have to worry about feet tracking. Animations on the ground are hard because you actually have to track the feet manually. So for example, when you're standing on the ground, feet don't move around. They're still in spot. We actually have to animate that on each frame to make sure the feet don't move. So it's very important here to make sure the feet match on the ground. So I'll usually always change the animation to the front view and make sure it makes sense from a balance standpoint. So here it looks like she's leaning over right onto this leg. This makes a little bit more sense, but I'm actually going to tweak it more to here. This is more natural looking. Like your leg's going to be a little more inward to catch your balance. So I want to make sure, you know, it's natural. This is a human, not just a game. I'm mimicking a human. So from this angle, this is going to make more sense. Again, don't worry about the leg. You can kind of basically, let's see, I'll put it here. And then just make sure it's level. All right, so that's going to be about what we're expecting. I'm going to go ahead and do the right leg while we're at it. All right, same story. I always like to bring it down and check to make sure it's right about towards the center, maybe just a little bit outwards. All right, and then it looks like it is facing a little bit more outwards. That bend, like I'm checking this bend, so it's a little bit inwards. And same story here. Again, that negative space, make sure this makes sense. So it looks like her, yeah, this shape, I want to match that shape over here. So maybe this comes in a little bit, match that shape. All right, bring this out of the ground. And it looks like it's basically this is at a 90-degree angle. So we'll put it there. And then the foot's not as sharply back anymore. So bring that down. All right, so that's looking about normal. It looks like her leg, based on the shading, her leg is a little bit further outwards. Maybe like this. Okay, that look, oh, maybe bend this a little bit further. All right, that looks about right for the legs. And now I can adjust the height. She's actually a little bit, based on this angle, I need to bring the root height up a little bit. Okay. So maybe about here. I basically just don't want any phasing into the ground. That's why I have this white square here, to make sure there's no phasing into the ground. All right. There. Great. And I usually will simplify it up here. So we're at 21.3. So maybe just 21.25. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Oops. Sorry, I clicked away. Let me go back to it. Drop punch. Record. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to make sure from each angle her foot's level. So I'll see here. Actually, it's easier to do it based off the heel. So let's see here, foot rotation. It's okay if there's a little bit of phasing of the outline. Obviously, it doesn't have to be perfect. Most of the time people won't see. But if I get in real close, I can see there's too much space there. So let me go back to that root, and I can actually adjust it from here. So let me try 21.5. That's still too high. What about 22? 22 is too low. So 21.75. Maybe if I rotate it a little bit up, a little better. Yeah, I guess that's all right. You'll never be able to tell the difference from the distance we'll be looking at it. All right, great. That's fine. Okay. Oh, and we're going to rotate this to make that more straight. All right. There. That looks great. All right. And usually once I do the lower half of the body, before I proceed, I want to make sure this is correct. So what I'll do is I'll backtrack and make sure this looks normal for the lower half at least. Because basically she's running and she's stopping. And so I want to make sure that heel, it's okay for the heel to face a little bit in this particular situation because it kind of exaggerates that you're hitting the ground, as long as the entire foot's not, it's only like basically phased that one frame. So imagine this is how fast it's going to go. So yeah, the one frame here is okay that it phases a little bit. It kind of exaggerates that you're stepping onto the ground versus floating. As long as you end up on the ground, and there's minimized phasing, and the phasing is for like 1 or 2 frames. That's fine. If it's phasing like this entire time, that's when I would modify it. But this is looking pretty good. Making sure her foot over here is also staying above ground, and it is because she's pulling that foot forward as she's landing on this foot. So this is a good motion here, and even looking at her hip, you can tell her hip is twisting as she's taking that energy and throwing it onto her left leg. Great. Looking great. Now let's continue on with the waist. So it looks like she's already starting to untwist. So we'll start untwisting here. All right. Not fully on the waist as usual. All right. And then the breast, it looks like she's going like this. These are usually hard to figure out which bones are doing what here because I don't know which parts of the waist and which parts of the breast. So I'm trying to just align it the best I can. Let's see. That looks pretty accurate. It looks like she's more bent that way, though. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Let me go ahead and change the head right quick. Basically, I like to go ahead and do the head so I can make sure this, like when the head is tilted correctly, that the angle makes sense. All right, let me look at it from the forward view to make sure. All right. Move the head up so it at least looks like she's looking at us. And same story, I may check the motion this way to see, okay, it looks like she's throwing her upper body to the right. I'm sorry, to her left, our right, so she can swing her arm around, because that's the motion we're doing. All right, it's very nice to plan that motion in advance. Okay, what are we actually doing? She's stepping down onto her foot and throwing her arm forward, and this really transcribes that well. All right, so that's good from that angle. Let me check. Yeah, this animation is looking great. Okay, all right, let's keep going. All right. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Oh, I can't sing that, I guess. Copyrights. All right, we're done with the oh, this is good, yeah. All right, so on to the arms. Okay, so we'll start with the left. Again, skipping collar because we, I don't know if I'm ever gonna, I don't know if I'll use it here, but we'll see. All right, so let's go ahead and do this one first. All right. And this stuff comes with practice. Ooh, interesting. I can tell here because look, her elbow is almost touching her thigh here versus not here. So my angle's not as steep. But honestly, it's okay. It doesn't have to match perfectly. That's something minor. It's just something that I do need to note, is that my positioning is slightly off. So I just need to be wary to make sure in the future I'm wary of it. Because, yeah, it looks like my bend is not as dramatic as this, which is fine for now. But it may cause a problem later. But anyway, this is fine for now. It's going to make basically some of these negative space shapes not really possible to hit, but I'll do my best. It looks like this needs to come back a little bit further, and the hand needs to go upwards. All right, so basically hand is over neck. This is about right. Maybe a little bit further out. It's like basically facing right in front of that shorts line, so the angle's the same on the arm. All right. Hand looks all right. Make sure there's no phasing. Okay, great. No phasing. Let's do the right arm. This one's basically getting charged up. We're going to rotate that mostly out. Let's go ahead and bend this just so it's easier to get the angle. This is almost all the way up. All right. I usually use the same outfit, so it's easier to match. So these short sleeves versus no sleeves here is throwing me off a little bit. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just do your best. I doubt many people will be doing this method. Just showing you what I do. All right. That's pretty good. All right, that looks about normal. Well, normal. It looks about G and T. Okay, negative space here looks similar enough. Okay, I can see the negative space here is a little bit exaggerated. Let me just check the angles. All right, make sure it makes sense. All right. And oh, also down here, I use the second angle to kind of see what it would be looking like from a player 2 perspective. So that way, because I'm always working from player 1 perspective on top, so I keep this player 2 perspective down at bottom as well. And I also leave the post-processing on so I can see kind of what the colors will look like in game as she's doing this motion. And yeah, it's actually looking really good so far with these 2 keyframes. I like the way that's looking. Something I do notice right now is you'll notice her foot's kind of oddly moving. It's more to the left here, and then it moves inwards. That's bothering me. Let me just fix that. Easy fix. Let's take it here, and I move it over. Rotate a little bit, back here, and that's much better. That looks much better. Notice, but the first frame's still off. So easiest way is just to take this, single frame, that's all I edited, and copy it, and that's it. Because again, you want all these to stay the same. There we go. And that's a much more natural leg motion. All right. All right, I'm liking this a lot. Okay, make sure there's no phasing, like I say. And make sure that arm bend looks natural. And it does. She's kind of throwing her arm back as she's charging up this move. Now, this is where I'll separate myself from G&T. Since she's doing a punch, she's not going to punch with an open hand like she does in G&T. I'm going to go ahead and change. That's her right hand needs to be a punch. So let's see. I know whenever she's blocking, her fists are made. So I'm just going to go to a blocking animation and grab her fists for the right hand only. So let's grab these fingers, copy those, go back to our drop punch. And on this frame, we're going to switch to a fist. Boom. And so remember earlier when I told you it blends from the last frame? So you see here, look at her fingers. You see her fingers? They're blending. I don't want them to blend this early. So I'm going to take that first set where they're open, and I'm going to also copy that to the last set of keyframes. So I want these open even here. So here is where they're open, and then during this transition is when I want them to switch to a fist. All right, fist. So maybe I should make both fists, because I mean it's really weird when you throw a punch with just one fist. Usually you have both your fists clenched. Let me see. If I was actually throwing a punch, how would that feel? Let's see, you're running and you throw a punch. I guess it's all right to leave the other hand open. All right, so we'll leave the other hand open for now, but we're definitely going to make the other, the punching hand a fist. All right, great. Back to recording. All right, and we're done with this set of frames. That looks great. This is what it looks like so far. Brilliant. All right, great. Moving on to the next set. Yo, we're only on frame 15 out of 60. I can't. All right. This is where it's going to get tricky because she's moving her whole body and she's got to stay on the ground. And there's a lot of keyframes in here because it's a complex animation basically. So let's see. This is what we just did here. And so then she goes up. So you see here, there's these few frames before she starts moving. So this is actually another set of frames. Only 3 frames later, I have to do all of this again. I hate ground animations. All right, let's go ahead and do it. All right. So this, for us, that'll be frame 16. So literally 2 frames later, and I've got to do another set. I hate, like, it's just required to make the animation look better. You have to get a little bit more fine. Usually you want to go you'll do every like 4 to 7 frames difference. But when it's just little tiny details, you have to do like every like 2 frames, 3 frames. That gets so tedious, especially with feet tracking. Feet tracking is so frustrating. Okay. Okay, so first, again, we're going to start at this hip. Whew. What I'll do is I'll probably do half the animation because this video is already getting long. We'll see. We'll see how we feel whether or not I finish it in this one video because this video is already so long and yeah, we're on frame. We're a quarter of the way done. Sheesh. All right. So she's now moving backwards a little bit. Sway for the hip. Let's zoom this out a little bit. Okay. Okay, about right there. All right. Bring that left leg back. This is where it gets tricky because she's moving. The animation's moving and the in-game model is moving versus in the animation screen alone, only the model is moving, only the animation is moving, not the model. Like, basically the game is telling her to move forward. So this is where it gets tricky with the feet tracking. Because I have to remember that when you're doing an animation of running, for example, the animation they're running in place. So I have to make sure the feet track with motion in mind. Ugh, animating. Okay. So yeah, that's about the correct angle to make sure. Let me go ahead and do the right leg before I adjust the feet. This lines more up with her spine and makes kind of straight line. So about here, is that about right? Outwards, rotation, a little bit higher there. Foot is about the same, maybe a little bit less relaxed. All right. That looks good. All right, now we can go back up and adjust this foot. Should be about there. Go to the front angle, make sure it makes sense. And you'll see this leg doesn't really look great. See this motion here. And you see all of this is messed up. Look at that leg. Look at that. That's not... Okay, so lots of things to change here. It's because that hip is changing. The hip throws everything off. So first we're going to bring this all the way back to the center. All right. At least as close as possible for now. All right, that fixed that. That's pretty easy. All right, and then I'm gonna bring this leg, rotate that back inwards a little bit. Because remember, you wanna make sure if you're moving your arm this way, it shouldn't be going sideways. It needs to continue the motion that it's going. So let's see, we're starting here. Yeah, that's good right there. I like where that is. All right. All right, back down to the feet. So here she's actually still running, but she's like landing and stopping like as she's throwing her weight forward, and then she's going to lunge and hit you down and then come back. So her foot actually is going to slide animation-wise because in the model the game's going to keep moving forward, so her foot needs to slide backwards. So that way when you combine foot sliding backwards with model moving forward, the foot ends up staying in place, which makes it seem like you're grounded. So that's kind of how this works. So that's why you'll notice when I go from that frame, you see how her foot is sliding backwards? That's normal because in the game, she's going to be moving forward, which means her foot needs to move backwards in order to symbolize that her foot has stopped her motion. So again, you remember, you got to animate with motion in mind. Okay. This needs to kind of like that. And again, I base the foot's positioning off this middle line. All right, and you want to basically make this as smooth as possible. And now that we have where the foot's supposed to be, I'm going to change the height to bring it down to the ground. You should usually base the height off the heel, because the heel is where you can, that's where the actual base of the foot is. So let me bring this down. 2, 2, nope. 2, 3, nope. 2, 4. 2, 4 is 2, 5, so 2, 3, 5. 2, 3, 2, 5. 2, 3, 3, 3. We'll go down just a little bit further. So 2, 3, 5. We'll just do that. It's okay if it phases a little bit. She's moving, you won't be able to tell. A little bit of phasing, tiny bit of phasing, that minuscule is fine. And at that, maybe I can rotate the foot just a little bit, even that out. All right, check it. All right. And if you want, you can kind of play it, it'll always loop. So yeah, you can see kind of, we're getting a motion here. All right, that's looking good. All right, 1, 2. All right, we're done with the lower half of the body. Let's go on to the upper half. Waist. Okay, I have no idea what this waist is doing. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just have to take a full reset on these because, geez, sometimes you forget where the positioning even is and where to kind of keep it going. Okay, so she's still rotated this way. She's now basically neutral in terms of rotation. She's more just like bent that way. Maybe a little bit of downwards, a little bit of forward. Ooh, bent a lot of ways. Be like that. And I don't, G&T is very exaggerated. I usually don't exaggerate as far as them usually. I want to be a little bit more realistic than that game maybe was. Looks like most of that's in her breast. All right, maybe like that. And then I'll come over here to kind of check and see. Yeah, that's looking really good. Like you can tell she's throwing all of her weight over here into that punch. All right, let's make sure that motion makes sense. Boom. Yeah, look at it. You can see it. Yeah, you can see that energy being thrown forward. I like that. Like I said, it doesn't have to match perfectly. It doesn't have to be exaggerated as that is. But definitely some exaggeration here as it is a cartoon game. All right. Great. I'll go ahead and just do the head right quick because why not? Needs to be looking at the player, maybe a little bit downwards. All right, let's see. Maybe like that. I'll just experiment sometimes. Maybe there. All right. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Boom. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's good. I like that. All right. Let's go back up to these arms and go ahead and knock out these arms, starting at the high leg. High leg. High arm. Okay. Actually, you can't see it, so you can kind of get creative here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other arm first, since it's on screen. Okay, and I see this is back, because remember, she's charging this. She's like running, throwing her back. Arm goes all the way back, even if your arm can't do it in real life. And then you just release all that energy downwards. So we're going to charge that arm all the way up. Looks like it's rotated up a little bit. This one is very exaggerated. I think most arms can't do this and go this far back. Her little arm maybe coming a little bit closer just to show that full maximum tension as we're about to just release all this energy. Got that fist made. And I'm going to go back to this perspective to make sure. So very key thing to keep in mind is this game is on a 2D grid. It's a 2.5D fighter, so everything needs to happen center. Center. So her arm, her fist here is actually leaning a little bit too far right. So I'm actually going to put this back over towards the left sometime. That whole motion needs to be on the, it will look like it's in 3D, but it needs to be moving along this line to make sure those hitboxes line up all the time when you're facing the player. All right, so I'll usually adjust this high arm. Which way is the best way? Technically her. I guess it's fine here. This is close enough. That hitbox is pretty big. You don't want to, of course, lose too much of the animation. So drawing a line straight up, it's close enough. You just want this range to for sure be covering this line at all times, because when she throws that punch, that hitbox, that's why hitboxes are exaggerated, to make sure, even though, because sometimes visually you may not be able to ensure that the fist collides, so you want to have a bigger hitbox for, exaggerated punches to make sure that the hitbox hits even when visually it's, more exaggerated. All right, that's good. Hand is a little bit above the head here, hand is above the head here. I guess it could come forward a little bit, maybe like that, like that. That's a little bit more close to G&T. All right. And then what I'll do is I can tell this hand is not in frame, so it shouldn't be in frame here. So the way I usually like to guess is you can get creative here however you want to. So I check the range of motion it's doing already, and I see she's throwing her body back. So when I do that motion and my arm goes up, I just know my lower arm goes back. So we need to move this arm out of the way. So we'll go ahead and go back on this. And like I say, you can get creative. Maybe bring this down too. And you see phasings happening. So I'll go back to I'll go back to here. And basically when you charge up, usually your other elbow goes towards your hip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this down and out like that. So she's kind of charging it inwards. Maybe line that up right with her hip like that. I'm just getting fully creative here. You don't have to do this. This is just me guessing. If I was throwing this punch, that's what I would do. I like to mimic them. So I will go down and then my elbow's pretty much touching my hip and my arm's kind of more upwards. But it can go lower as I charge all the way. My arm is almost parallel with my thigh. So I'm just going to make her arm parallel with her thigh because that's how my arm is. And yep, same story. My wrist will be kind of tilted upwards. And this looks fine from this angle. Lots of energy here. You see her throwing her body over here. This hand's out the way. Looks great over here. And it should be pretty much out of sight. Yep, that's what I was thinking. And actually, looking closely, I can actually see her arm, her elbow right there. And I was just guessing that's what it would do. And actually, I was right. That's exactly what she seems to be doing over here And just make sure, of course, it makes sense. So let's check it here where I can actually see it. So she throws her arm back. Yep, I like that. Boom. And no phasing is happening. Boom. Love it. All right, that's it. We're done with that frame, that keyframe. All right, next on to the set of major keyframes. All right. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Oh, so many. Okay. This is the last one we just did. Boom, boom. Ooh, interesting. So you'll see, ooh, this one's interesting. Okay. So that's what we just did. That changes the hip. And then this is completely different. So I actually will cut this corner because that's a single frame change and it's just not worth it. I wish I had checked that before, and what I would have done is I would have just gone straight to here and kind of blended the two, but it's all right. I'll just blend it from there. So what we'll do is our next range of motion is going to be... So this one's going to be two sets. There's the arm and then the rest of the body. I'm going to do the rest of the body first, and then I'll retweak the arm from there. Because basically you're throwing the body, and then the arm kind of follows behind it for greater impact. So first, let's tweak the body. So we're going from here to... I hate it when it does this. I want to see them clearly so I can track the motion. So it looks like this motion starts different. So we're going to go here. This will be our next keyframe for the body. All right. That is 21, which is 20 in our time. So 4 frames. It's not a whole far. I hate it when they do that. Okay, full frame jump. All right, back to the hip. All right. And this is where our feet are going to start needing to stay around the same spot, which gets tricky. So we're going to go all the way forward because she just threw her whole body forward in those 4 frames. All the way forward, a little bit back. I think that's a little bit too far forward. Look at her brown thing. So that angle, it needs to be a little bit less extreme. Maybe rotate a little bit this way. All right, that's about good. Go ahead and bring this leg back over a little bit. Angle-wise, yeah, it's about the same roughly. This one though is further. And it's about there. And before we start tweaking it any further, let's go ahead and do this leg too. This just helps me make sure I got the correct angle for the hip, essentially. So I like to do the legs first to make sure I get the hip angle, because if the hip is off, it's going to throw everything else off later. So this one's definitely more downwards. It's more upwards. Looking at this negative space here, 2 upwards. Or maybe this is 2 downwards. Actually, yeah, this low leg needs to come up a little bit. It's more extreme. Yeah, that's about right. And then this low leg needs to come back a little bit. The foot needs to relax a little bit. All right. Actually, low leg is 2. Yeah. Yeah, that's better. Okay. All right. And I think it's a little more like, yeah. Okay. All right. Now let's check this from the front. Okay. So you see the leg is starting to move outwards more. So let's go ahead and fix that. Bring it more inwards. All right. I'm not liking how her other leg is kind of going crazy. I'm not liking that angle, so let's see. It's too, yeah. What I think needs to happen is it needs to be rotated more like this. Yeah. More like that. And maybe outwards a little bit. She's throwing that weight to the side. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, I like that much better. But I'll have to verify it again to make sure it's better that way. Okay, let's make sure it still matches somewhat. You know what? It's all right because I prefer the way that looks better, even though it doesn't match perfectly. I think my hip is a little bit off, but you know what? This is still fine. It's not perfect. That's fine. I'll accept this. All right. Taking too much time. Okay. All right. So what I'll do is I'll stop after this keyframe. You guys get the picture now. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do the height. So let's redo this foot. All right, go back to that root. Let's try 2.5. Because basically she's going down as she's fighting, so basically I have to manually move the height to adjust that. 2.5 is still too high. 2.6. Oh, still too high. 2.7. 5. 2.8. 2.9. 2.9 is too far. 2.8. 2.8 seems all right. Yeah, 2.8's just fine. Perfect. All right. Rotate that foot a little bit. More like that. Make sure it makes sense. It does. All right, so this is the tricky part. Making sure this foot slides smoothly. Okay, so in between frames particularly. So let's see here. So she steps down. Let me move it off so you guys can actually see. So she steps down, a little bit of phasing to emphasize she's stepping onto the ground. And then the model appears to be sliding backwards because she's moving forward. So it'll appear she's standing still. Yep, and that's a good motion. Look at that. Perfect. All right. If it's moving, it's easier because the model's moving so fast, it's harder to tell the foot's not perfect. You see how the foot's not perfectly sliding back? That's fine. It's a little bit more noticeable when it's supposed to be standing still, which comes next. But you guys will see that. But anyway, you can see already, okay, that's what it's like keeping those feet to track. You have to tweak it until it looks normal. All right, and that's a good animation. Play it a few times. All right, yeah. All right. Okay. Great. And then waist, let's see, she's kind of completing the motion here. So let's go ahead and rotate about there. Breast needs to come. More rotation on the waist. And it's more downwards too. It's more neutral, that's right. And it's totally okay if you get lost modifying these and you don't know, like I think I'm a little bit lost. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reset these. I'm gonna put these both at 0, 0, 0, because I can tell where it is here, but I'm losing myself as I'm connecting from the previous frame. So I'm gonna reset these to neutral. So this is neutral, and then from neutral, I can see, okay, I need to twist a little bit this way, go forward maybe, and then the breast can pretty much finish at the rest. No, it can't. So let me go back here, rotate further, more down, more this way. And I'm already seeing now, I think my hip is not exaggerated enough because my hip is more upwards. This is, but I'm sure I can make it work. Let me try. I'm just not seeing, how are they getting that angle? It's all trial and error. Having a hard time replicating this angle. So let's see. Let me follow her spine, but it's a spine and then curved up. Maybe like that. Is that how they're doing it? I'm seeing a lot of extra wrinkles, which I guess it's alright, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's as close as I'm able to get it. And I'm not liking these shapes the mesh is making. I try to keep that shape as smooth as possible. And that's not looking great. All right. So I think it's like that. Maybe I can unbend this a little bit. So maybe something like this. All right, let me check and see what it looks like from this angle. All right, it looks all right from this angle. Let me see what the motion looks like. Yeah, that looks all right. Okay. Oh, great, yep. It's a little bit right heavy, but for an exaggerated animation, that's all right. Boom. All right, let me go ahead and do this head while I'm at this angle. Yep, that's all right. Okay. Animations. They take so long. All right. And then let's go ahead and do the we're gonna do the left arm. Let's go ahead and do that one. So this one is about mid back. We're gonna go ahead and oops, that was collar. My bad. High arm. It's gonna come down to about there. A little bit further back. About there. Put this up. Just here. All right, maybe about there, like that. That makes sense. Make sure the motion is correct. Yep, that's a good motion. Cool. All right, and then for this arm, actually, I'm going to leave the other arm unattended for the moment because it's still doing a motion. This arm right now is moving independently from the rest of the body. So I need to basically finish the next set of keyframes to do that. Essentially what I would do is I would check, see here. So this would have been the next set of keyframes. And then I would program the arm to work off of that. Because basically when you throw the body, you're throwing the body, this arm is going to stay charged up. And then as you get kind of halfway through that motion, then you're going to start throwing this arm forward. to kind of follow that kinetic energy. So moving, throw the arm forward, movement stops on the body, arm keeps going. Boom, for the hip. That's how you do a good motion. So they get desynchronized. So they charge up together, and then the body moves before the arm, and then the arm moves, the body stops, and then the arm finishes for the impact. So normally I'll finish the full body motion, and then I'll add the arm movement in compliance to that. I'm not going to show that in this video. This video is just too long already. This is just to give you guys an idea of how animations go. I have to do this for every single character. And this is just to get the animation. The animation doesn't even work in the game. This is just to do the animation, then I have to program it in the game, add in motion, add in all of those things to make it actually a moveset. The only other thing I'll show you before I end this stream is hitboxes. So let's just go back. This is where I usually would like to finish the motion before I do hitboxes. But the hitboxes defaulted are off. You can see these are all the hitboxes tied to the model. The default is those are always off. I do my hitboxes in the animation section, not program. I do not program hitbox frames. These are fully animated. So I usually like a hitbox to be active between 4 to 8 frames in that range. 4 being pretty standard. 8 being like, that's a really good attack. Shit, it's got 8 whole frames. Sometimes more if it's a really long attack, a really good attack, it's going to have a lot. But basically, I want it to cover those frames of motion. Because, you know, it's not just the impact, it's the whole motion. If you get hit, any part of that motion. So typically the way I would do it is about... that arm is going to start moving somewhere around here in between these 2 key frames. That's where that arm's going to start moving, most likely. So typically what I'll do is I'm going to locate the arm that's punching is actually the right arm. So I like to use that whole, basically, you don't want to just do the hand itself for some of these, unless it's just a jab, then you use the hand. This, she's throwing her whole body at you. Her whole upper body needs to be activated in this animation. Because of all that energy around here. So I'm going to turn on her hand hitbox during this. Oops. I need to go back. I know you can't see it. Here, let me zoom out like that so you can see it. All right. So, yeah, this is the frame. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on her hand and her elbow hitbox because it's that whole arm. So at this start here on frame 19, that's when her hitbox is going to go active. And you can tweak this later, or I can tweak it later too if needed. But this is what controls the active frames. I may start them a little bit early. Sometimes it looks better to start early. So that way when the animation kind of gets to its pinnacle, they've already started to get hit. So sometimes you want to start these early. But I'm starting right here around frame 19. So that means it's going to take 19 frames of this move before it actually starts. That means it's a slower move to start up. To be upfront, or to be direct, like a jab usually starts around frame 10 for the animation, maybe even sooner. Typically around there, I think that's what I remember. This is already frame almost twice as long for a normal jab because you're doing all that kind of build up and then throw it. So that's kind of what that stands for. So I'm going to turn all of these on. I'm also going to turn on her upper body. So that's going to be, don't want to do the hip. Her hip doesn't move too much, so I'm going to leave the hip off. There is a hitbox in her hip, as you would have seen in the last video. I'm just going to do the breast and the arms. Should I do the head? I won't do the head. The head's too far to the side. You see, it's way over here. But I'm going to do this whole upper body just right here. I want all of those hitboxes on. So torso and the whole arm. So the arm ones are already on, and I'm just going to find that torso for the breasts. So the breast hitbox actually is down here. So hip is up here, breast is down here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the hip. So these 3 are the entire upper body, and then that right arm. So all of those will activate. You can't see now because they're invisible, but they are active. So here, inactive, activate. And then what I would do is I would leave those on for maybe, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe like 7 frames. It basically just depends on whenever that motion stops. So in this case, let's see, arm goes down, motion stopping right about here. So on about frame 21, which is frame 20, in my game is where those that motion kind of stops. So let's see where that would be here. Something is off. Oh, that's right. Yeah, sorry, my motion should be starting up here. So I'm sorry, I did do it wrong. So the motion should be starting up here as she's kind of going down. So I'm going to activate those hitboxes. Sorry, much sooner, maybe around here. So yeah, they'll turn on, sorry, around like frame 16, and then by frame 20, this is where I would go ahead and turn them off. So maybe about 4 frames. Like I say, it's pretty accurate, about 4 frames. I may do like 5 frames since takes so long to build up. Maybe do like 4 to 5 frames. Yep, but right now it's on for 1, 2, 3, 4 frames, and then they turn off. Maybe I'll turn them off after the motion stops, just in case. So to make sure you get the full range of degrees. Make sure, so I'll exaggerate a little bit. Boom. So boom. I haven't added the motion to our arm yet, so it's a little bit weird to visualize, but this is how I would do it if that motion was already complete. At the start of the motion, I would go ahead and turn them on. So basically, as you're throwing yourself at them, that counts as a hit. And of course, the arm will just kind of complete the hit. And all the way through into that motion, anytime within that frame, those ranges of frames that arm or upper body connects to another player, that's when the hit will be registered. So this is the first half of that animation, and of course I would just keep going all the way till I got to the end. Of course, I would blend the first 8 frames, so that way it'll blend from the running animation into this kind of jump and then land into the throw. And then same thing, when I finish the range, I would blend it. Let's say she finishes down, I would blend it back into her stance. And that blending is done through programming. So I only have to do the first major keyframe and then the semi-last keyframe, and then I'll basically merge from, the whatever they were doing before will merge into that first keyframe, and then once they're done fighting, I'll merge it back into whatever they're doing next. So that's how animations work for my game. So sorry this video is so long, but this is a look into animations to give you an idea of what that looks like. This animation is longer. I mean, it's a full second long. Imagine the ones that go longer. I've had some that go up to like a 1.5 seconds long in animations. This is also why I have not done specials. Specials are all cinematic and fully animated. Oh my gosh, can you imagine how much work it would take to do a full cinematic jutsu, which is like 10 to 20 seconds sometimes? Way so heavy on the animations. A shorter animation will be an example of 2A. I know this looks like it's a lot, but it's really not. So this is pretty easy. Oh, sorry, not 2A. 2A, yeah, no, sorry, that is a lot. 5A is what I meant to pull up. So 5A, you'll see it has a lot of frames, but actually it's really easy. It's way easier than that. So actually her first frame is free. I just do the one pose and blend it. So you charge up, it's a bunch of frames of freedom, but it's actually frame 1 is already there. So I don't even need to do the frame, I just blend it straight to this. It'll blend, I usually blend it about maybe over 5 to 10 frames, I'll blend it. And then that's animation 1. Animation 2 is her throwing them. So, because it's a 2-parter, you charge up and then you release. So the charging up is a single frame, and then I continue from that frame, which I will already have. So frame 1, and then you'll see it goes like, let's see, 1, 2, 3. So she basically just gets 3 keyframes, and then I blend it back into her stance. So that's so easy. 3 keyframes. I guess I should have done that one. But yeah, easy peasy. Basically 3, maybe 4 keys, and the rest is just blending. So these, even though you see it's just as long as the one we just did, the one we just did had so many I have to do because it's a complex motion, versus some of them are easy, like this one. So 5A, that's why I haven't done them, because they're easy. I'm like, I can knock those out anytime. Same thing with this one. You see, blend it into, let's see, I would blend it into maybe there. So 1, 2, 3. And then the rest is blending. So yep, a lot of these are easy, but then the ones like 2B, this one is super complex. Look at all of these. Like spinning is so difficult because there's like the step into it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then blending. Yeah. And it's on the ground. So anyway, that's what animations look like. I know I keep saying that over and over and over again. You guys see what that process is like. We did, let's see how many did we do. We did 1, 2, 3, 4. We did 4 primary keyframes in this, and we didn't even finish that one because I didn't do the arm yet. And we had quite a few to go. And it took this long for those. Obviously, I was pausing quite a bit to explain, but obviously, this is pretty much what it looks like, and constantly replaying to make sure the animation looks smooth and things like that. From angles, maybe you have to go back and tweak stuff. But this is all day long for a single animation. Then once it's in, that's when I'll open up the coding side of things. Oh yeah, that's right, I don't have that open right now. But on the coding side of things, that's where I would then go ahead and add in, like, for example, the movesets. So I don't even think I have hers open, her moveset. But yeah, I would have to go in after I add in the animation in the move, like into her list of animations. Then I'll go into her moveset and then program it from there, but I don't have it up, so we can disregard that. But yeah, the only other thing is in the animator. When I added that new animation, this is what we call the animator view. So this is the list of all the animations that are tied to her. So inside Sakura's, this is Sakura's here. So you'll see it just adds it anywhere random. This is the one we just added. This goes down with her moveset ones. So the way I do it, I'll get into this with character movesets. But anyway, yeah, this will go down here and I'll have to name it. This is her RB, so I'll just name this to RB. Boom. And then I'll put this over here with the B section. Boom. That's it. Oh, and I have to come over here into her MOT and make sure it's on a repeat, because I don't want this one to loop. So I'll locate that drop punch. It defaults to loop. I don't want this to loop. Yep, and that's it. Now this animation is in the game. If I were to actually program it to run this in the game, it would actually do those first frames. But we're not there yet. That's for movesets. We'll cover that in a different video. That's hopefully not this long. Thank you guys so much for anyone who watched this far. Here's another look into how this game development goes. Catch you guys next time. Bye.